from Windsor West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Acting Premier. In December, this Liberal government made a secretive backdoor decision to cut the amount of emergency leave days available to automotive workers under the Employment Standards Act. Since then, I have had countless conversations with my constituents who are outraged that the Liberal government would single them out in this way. I now have almost 1,500 signatures on a petition from workers and their families opposed to this cutback, and that's in addition to the thousands of signatures collected by Unifor. Auto workers are hardworking people, balancing physically strenuous jobs with the demands of raising a family. They deserve the same rights and protections as every other worker in Ontario.
Absolutely.
Will the Premier listen to these 1,500 Ontarians and countless others and immediately remove this unfair regulation?
Acting Premier.
The Minister of Labour, Speaker.
Minister of Labour.
Speaker, thank you, and thank you to the honourable member for the question. Speaker, we've consulted with industry, we've consulted with stakeholders, we've consulted with Labour. We put in place a personal emergency leave project, Speaker, in the auto sector specifically. What it required was that auto sector's employers with more than 50 employees provide each employee up to 7 personal emergency leave days, as well as unlimited time off, Speaker, for the death of a family member, and that's on each occasion on the passing of loved ones, Speaker. It was a specific recommendation of the advisors from the Changing Workplaces Review. So what happened on January the 1st of this year, Speaker? All Ontarians now are covered for personal emergency leave and for sick time in the province of Ontario. Prior to that, Speaker, it only applied to companies greater than 50, Speaker. I'll expand on it in the supplementary.
Thank you. I recognize the member for Windsor West.
Thank you. Back to the Acting Premier. 1,500 signatures collected in a week from my constituents, tens of thousands of more across the province. You clearly didn't consult with those auto workers. The cavalier responses we keep getting on this issue from this Liberal government shows just how out of touch they really are. When we asked about this regulation back in December, we were told that emergency and bereavement leave for auto workers is a regulatory burden that is getting in the way of businesses. Serious? When challenged at a town hall in Windsor last week, the Premier said this was about fair workplaces and told workers not to worry because the vast majority of auto workers are unionized. But Mr. Speaker, or Madam Speaker, she knows that is not always the case. It's not just workers that assemble vehicles that are impacted. I've had calls from my constituents who work at paint, plastic and parts suppliers who don't have the same benefits as workers at the assembly plants, and they now have even less protection under the ESA. So I ask again, will the Premier truly commit to fair workplaces and immediately remove this unfair regulation?
Thank you, Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Speaker. Let me reiterate, Speaker, and thank you to the member for this question. We're paying as much attention to this as we possibly can, and we get the same input as the third party gets, Speaker. What we did on January 1st, for the first time in the history of the province of Ontario, Speaker, all employers in the auto sector are required to make personal emergency leave available to every employee that works in that sector. That wasn't the case before, Speaker. Companies under 50 were excluded from this. Speaker, this has a pilot project status. The advisor asked us to put it in place to see how it worked, to get feedback through consultation, Speaker. It's still in a pilot project phase. We're corresponding with the same folks at the third party as Speaker. We're determined to make this fair. We're determined to keep Ontario's auto sector competitive, Speaker. So if I can close and just say, as the labour reforms roll out, we're going to continue the dialogue with the stakeholders, with the employers, with the employees in this regard, Speaker, to make sure we come to the right resolution.